afternoon. If you watch your step coming around, please, and get seated comfortably directly in front of the microphones for me, please.
Raise your right hand, please. When you can. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Help you God.
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Abigail Hamill. I'm a crime scene specialist with Gwinnett County Police Department.
And I guess what education do you have to be a crime, or education and training do you have to be a crime scene specialist with Gwinnett County?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in criminology. I'm certified by the state of Georgia to be a crime scene technician. I've attended over 300 hours of training in order to achieve that certification. And I've been doing this for about 3 years now.
And what are the basic duties of a crime scene investigator in Gwinnett County?
The main portion of our job is to process crime scenes, to collect, preserve, and process any evidence related to those crime scenes.
What can that evidence include?
The evidence for each scene varies from scene to scene. We don't usually get the same thing at any particular scene, but typically the processing usually includes photography, any type of chemical testing such as blood testing or fingerprinting of that evidence.
Were you so assigned and so employed in July of 2021?
Yes, I was.
Did you participate in the investigation of a homicide that occurred at Yellow River Park?
I did.
And what was your role in that investigation?
I was the lead crime scene technician that was present at the investigation.
And what specifically would your role be as the lead crime scene investigator?
So the investigation starts off with a walkthrough, which we would get from a first responding officer who arrived at the scene before us. They take us through the scene to show us any evidence that's been located prior to our arrival. And then we also conduct our own search of the scene as well to identify any additional evidence that maybe got missed during that initial period before we arrived. And then after we get the walkthrough, we begin processing the scene, which usually starts with photography. We'll lay down any evidence markers that we need to at that point in time and re-photograph the scene again. We'll take video footage depending on the type of scene that we have. Usually for a homicide, we would take video footage. And then we'll conduct a secondary search of the scene to ensure that no evidence has been missed a second time. And then we would collect the evidence from that point, and then usually it's transported back to a lab for further processing.
Okay, so that's generally. Specifically, what did you do with regard to this investigation that was at Yellow River Park in July of 2021?
So upon arrival at the scene, like I said, I had the officers do a walkthrough, so they showed me the evidence that they found. I did obtain photographs of this scene. Searching additionally was conducted after the scene walkthrough, so in this case, the victim was adjacent to a large field. And then there was a wooded area surrounding that field. So we had a class of officers in training, an entire class, come out to help with the search, to do a line search, to walk along a specific path in order to search the ground and make sure that no evidence was missed in the large field that was adjacent to where she was located. And then in the wooded area that led from her location towards the parking lot. We also called out a canine unit to come and search as well. And then upon the searches being completed and the photographs being completed, the evidence was collected, which the evidence in this case was 2 fired cartridge casings, which I collected and took to the crime scene truck where we have a processing area. The fired cartridge casings were swabbed for DNA, and then they were processed for fingerprints using black fingerprint powder. They were then transferred into the custody of another specialist in order for ballistics testing to be performed on them back at the lab. Video documentation was collected from the scene. A rough sketch was drawn of the scene itself. And then once the medical examiner staff arrived in order to move the body of the victim, additional photographs were taken, and then swabs were taken of the blood that was left on the area after the victim was removed.
Do you recall which crime scene analyst the shell casings were turned over to?
Yes.
Who?
The That's crime scene specialist Kia Jimenez.
Now, did you conduct any of the ballistics testing or analysis of the 2 shell casings that were fired?
I performed the DNA swabs of the casings and the fingerprinting of the casings before they got turned over to Specialist Jimenez, but I did not do the ballistics testing myself.
Did you get any results from the fingerprint testing or swabs of the shell casings that you found?
The DNA swabs are not tested within Gwinnett County Police Department. If they were going to be tested, then a detective would send them off to the GBI for testing. I don't know the results of those tests. The fingerprinting did not yield any results.
And when you say they, I guess, didn't yield any results, did you find any fingerprints on the shell casing?
I did not.
To show you what's marked as States Exhibits 8 through 19. It's a series of photographs starting with States Exhibit number 8. Could you describe what they are?
Yes. States Exhibit number 8 is a photograph depicting one of the fired cartridge casings that contains an evidence marker, which I placed, which is evidence marker number 1. States Exhibit number 9 is an up-close picture of States Exhibit number 8, which contains one of the fired cartridge casings that's marked with evidence marker number 1. States Exhibit number 10 is the other of the 2 fired cartridge casings, which is marked with evidence marker number 2. States Exhibit 11 is a photograph of the body of the victim standing from the angle of her right foot. It shows her entire body and also the ground surrounding that area. States Exhibit 12 is another angle of the victim's body, which is kind of standing at the end of both of her feet, looking upwards towards her head. States Exhibit 13 is a photograph showing the victim's right hand. It also depicts her hair and some biological fluids on the ground near her head. States Exhibit 14 still shows the victim's right hand, but it also shows an image of more of her hair, the blood on the ground near her head, and then more of her head in that picture. States Exhibit 15 is more of an up-close 90-degree shot of the upper torso and head of the victim, and it also depicts a portion of her hair as well. States Exhibit 16 is a picture of the ground that was beneath the victim after the medical examiner personnel had moved her. It also shows the blood that was left on the ground after she had been moved. States Exhibit 17 is a wider shot of the crime scene prior to the victim being moved. The evidence markers have been placed to show the location of the fired cartridge casings at this point in time, and the picture also shows the screens that we use for privacy purposes. States Exhibit 18 shows the overall crime scene prior to the evidence markers being laid. You can still note the location of the fired cartridge casings by small pieces of paper that were placed prior to my arrival. It also contains the body of the victim as well. States Exhibit 19 is another image that shows the overall layout of the scene, including evidence markers marking the fired cartridge casings, and this is from the point of view of beyond the victim's feet.
Are each one of those a true and accurate depiction of what you described?
Yes, they are.
Do any of them appear to have been altered in any way?
No, they do not.
Your Honor, the state would tender States Exhibits 8 through 19.
No objection, Judge.
States 8 through 19 are then admitted without objection.
I'm gonna
Okay.
point out for the jury as I publish the exhibits, there will be no audio with these, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Start with State's Exhibit number 8, maybe. State's Exhibit number 8. I realize you described it, but can you just point out for the jury what is significant and what is State's Exhibit number 8 contains?
You're gonna have to keep your voice up if you step away from the microphone, and that's fine.
So this right here would be the fired cartridge casing that evidence marker number 1 is labeling. This white piece of paper was laid prior to my arrival by first responding officers just for ease of locating this item, but I placed the evidence marker in order to mark it for the photographs.
State's Exhibit 9.
This is a closer up picture of the previous image, which shows you more clearly the fired cartridge casing that evidence marker number 1 is labeling.
Now as far as you know, is this shell casing where it was found and as it was found?
As far as I know, yes, it has not been moved.
Is it sitting on top of, can I ask this question? Does it look like it's been stepped on?
No, it appears to be sitting on the surface of the ground.
So if it had been stepped on or some pressure were applied to it, what could have happened to it?
You would notice that specifically the hollow portion right here would maybe be filled with dirt or would be sunken into the ground further.
This is State's Exhibit 10.
This is the second of the 2 fired cartridge casings, which I have labeled with evidence marker number 2. It also had a piece of white notebook paper laid prior to my arrival.
And does the shell casing in State's Exhibit number 10 appear to have been stepped on?
No, it does not.
And how can you tell that?
The hollow portion right here does not appear to have any dirt in it. It appears to be sitting on the surface of the ground.
This is State's Exhibit 11.
This image is depicting the body of the victim, as I described before, kind of off the front of her right foot. It shows her in the position that she was in when I arrived on scene. To my knowledge, she hasn't been manipulated or moved at all at this point in time.
State's Exhibit 12.
Overall shot of the body of the victim where you can see more on top of her body standing.
State's Exhibit 13.
This image is depicting the right hand of the victim. It's also showing the hair of the victim, and blood that's present.
State's Exhibit 15.
is showing more of a 90-degree shot of the victim from the torso to the top of her head. It does show the blood flow from her nose and from her eyes towards the top portion of her head and off to the side. You can also see
State's Exhibit 16.
ground. You can see the right hand of the victim here, but this is after medical examiner staff has moved her, and this is the ground beneath where she was laying at the time. This area here is where the approximate location of her head, so it's showing the blood that was left behind after she had been moved.
State's Exhibit 17.
More of an overall shot of the scene prior to her being moved. See the evidence markers are here labeling those fired cartridge casings that we saw in the previous images. These are the privacy screens that we have for public.
Because about what time of the day was it at this point?
The exact time of this photograph, but it was probably close to 8 in the morning.
So had the sun come up?
Yes.
And were there, I guess, people coming into the park to do park activities?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 28.
We don't have a 28 yet.
I'm sorry. 18. 28 was my own designation.
This is a similar photograph, but prior to the evidence markers that I laid being placed. You can still see the white notebook paper indicating the approximate location of the fire cartridge casings, but this is just showing the body of the victim.
And does it show the condition of the ground where in the area where she was found?
Yes, it appears as though the ground is kind of damp. Maybe it had rained the night before, and it's not very grassy here. You can see there's a large tree, so there's not a lot of grass right in this area, and the ground is compact.
Were there a lot of footprints present?
There were not.
Now, as this photograph was taken after officers had been on the scene, marked shell casings, and erected small barricades, were even officers' footprints, were those present?
And at this point in time, I had also walked through the scene, and my own footprints were also not present.
And State's Exhibit 19.
Showing the body of the victim from her feet area, but you can see the evidence markers that have been placed for the cartridge.
And again, are there any footprints in this photograph?
There are not.
Thank you. You also mentioned scene videos.
Yes.
Did you take videos of this crime scene?
Yes, I did.
They show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 20. You recognize this?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a USB containing the video footage that I obtained from the crime scene.
How many videos are contained on that thumb drive?
I believe there's 5.
And did you watch each and every one of them?
Yes.
And is each and every one of them a true and accurate depiction of the video you took on the scene in Yellow River Park on July 28th, 2021?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would tender State's Exhibit 20 as the thumb drive, and Exhibits 20A through E being the 5 videos that CSI Hamill recorded on the day on the crime scene.
Right, State's 20 is admitted.
Are the videos narrated, or are they simply just that videos?
There's no audio on the videos.
I'm going to publish at this time, and I will start with Exhibit 20A. If you could just tell the jury what we're looking at.
So this is a little bit further away from the actual scene, kind of showing how the scene appears as we walk towards the scene. You can tell that we're outside of the main barrier of crime scene tape at this point.
And at the beginning of the video, and I'm pausing it at the 2-second mark, are you able to see kind of how large the area of the park is around where Tori was found?
Yes, so this would be this area here, and extending off in that direction would be the grassy field that I referred to early on. And then the immediate area where she was located is kind of contained right here in this crime scene tape. There's also, you can see wooded areas along this way, and this direction would be towards the parking lot area.
And was this the area that was searched by the line of police recruits that you mentioned?
Yes, it was.
And again, was anything found as a result of those searches?
No.
Now publishing Exhibit 20B. Again, if you could just describe for the jury what we're looking at.
So this is walking up towards the scene as it was found. You can tell that I've laid the evidence markers down to mark the fired cartridge casings at this point. It shows the distance between the body of the victim and the evidence markers labeling the fired cartridge casings.
I'm going to pause it here at about 4 seconds. Whoa. Where it's clear. You mentioned it shows the distance between the body and the cartridge casings.
Correct.
Did you measure that distance?
I didn't personally measure the distance. We had another specialist measure the distance between the casings.
How familiar are you with the operation of semi-automatic firearms and the ejection of cartridge casings?
I have a basic understanding of how semi-automatic firearms work.
Does a semi-automatic firearm eject a cartridge casing when it's fired?
It does.
What happens to, or what can happen to a shell casing after it is ejected from a semi-automatic firearm?
Shell casings can be, typically with a right-handed firearm, shell casings will be ejected out the right side of the gun. They can go any number of direction, any number of ways depending on the type of gun, the mechanisms of the individual shooter. There's really no consistency as to where they will go or how they will land. They can bounce or roll or do any number of things depending on the weather, the shooter, any number of factors that vary person to person.
And is that why you personally did not measure the distance between, or where the distances relating to these shell casings?
In my training and experience, the distance between the shell casings and any other items of evidence isn't something that we typically would measure because we don't consider it pertinent information to have regarding a crime scene. But I didn't personally measure these because I knew that digital imaging would be taken, which could later provide the measurements if needed.
Okay. Now going to publish video Exhibit 20C.
So this is showing an up-close shot of the fired cartridge casing labeled with evidence marker number 1. And then we're moving on to the fired cartridge casing labeled with evidence marker number 2.
State's Exhibit 20D.
And this is showing just video documentation of the body of the victim prior to her being moved or manipulated in any way. And this is showing the defect in the side of her head.
And when you say defect, what do you mean?
Typically, we use the word defect to describe a hole that's made as a result from a gunshot wound.
And is that what it appeared to be to you?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 20E.
This is showing the body of the victim from the other side of her, also showing the other side of her head as well.
I'm going to show you it's marked as State's Exhibit 21. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 21?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 21?
These are the fired cartridge casings that I collected from the crime scene.
And how do you know that these are the fire cartridge casings that you collected from this crime scene?
They contain the original packaging, which I taped and initialed, each individually and also both together.
And are they in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected them and packaged them?
Other than the fact that they've been removed from their packaging, yes.
Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibit 21.
No objection, Judge. Thank you.
All right, 21 is admitted without objection.
That's all the questions I have for Investigator Hamill at this time.
And if you'll put any admitted exhibits at the front so that both
I will,
sides
Your Honor.
can access them. Right, Mr. Lawrence Lewis, cross-examination.
Thank you. Ms. Hamill, the prosecutor called Investigator Hamill. How should I refer to you? Is it Investigator Hamill, Ms. Hamill?
Either is fine.
Okay. Is that your title, Investigator?
Specialist investigator.
Okay, fantastic. Let me start here. You testified that you didn't leave any discernible footprints on the ground when you walked around the scene. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, so when I hear you say that, I think that the ground was hard. Is that a fair characterization? The ground was hard such that couldn't leave any footprints?
It seemed to be fairly compact, yes.
Okay, and is it fair to say that fired cartridge casings can bounce on a hard ground? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right. And is that why you indicate that the distance of the shell casings is not pertinent? Is that why you said that?
That can be a portion of the reason, but it's not the reason in its entirety.
Okay, give me the reason it's in its entirety, why the distance of the shell casings is not pertinent.
The amount of variables that can come into play when measuring the location of a shell casing is too high to scientifically replicate and create a constant for. They could be moved because of the ground, the wind, if it had been rained on, the physics of the shooter, him or herself, whoever it may be, how strong they're holding the firearm can affect the direction of the casings. So there's just too many variables to create a scientific constant in order to have that be something that we can rely on as scientific evidence.
And when you say that, in my mind, even if you can try to replicate it, one firearm, 6 of the same type of shell casings, a dummy hand firing it, the shell casings are going to go all over. They're never going to land in the same spot. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so where the shell casings land does not give you any indication of where the gun was when the fired cartridge casings were ejected from the gun. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay, and that's why you say we don't need to be taking all these measurements because it's not pertinent. We really just don't know where the gun was when these rounds were ejected. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
Okay. The 2 fired cartridge casings were recovered, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And they appeared to be the same brand, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you put black powder on each of the separate fired cartridge casings in order to try to get fingerprints?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And in doing that, you were unable to pull any fingerprints of value. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
We have the pictures of sort of where the rounds are. The round that's closest to the body is about how far away from the body?
If I can refer.
Sure.
The round that was closer to the body was marked with evidence marker number 2, and it was approximately 9 feet away from the head of the victim.
9 feet away from the head. And the other round, marked number 1?
Yeah, that was approximately 14 feet away from the head of the victim.
14 feet. And do we know how far number 1 and number 2 were from each other?
I don't personally have that measurement. I believe another specialist would have that.
All right, that's fine. The 2 shell casings that were recovered, the brand, do you have that in your report?
I do.
What's the brand?
The shell casings that were recovered from the scene were Aguila brand.
Spell that for me.
Yes, Aguila.
And they were 9mm rounds?
That's correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit number 5. I don't know if I should suggest that they're bullets or shell casings, but they appear to be ammunition. That appears to be ammunition in State's Exhibit number 5. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Are those rounds labeled the same thing? Do they appear to be the same brand?
As each other or as the casings?
As each other.
There are 2 different types of brands in this picture.
What are the 2 different types?
The first one is RP Luger 9mm. The second brand is Aguila 9mm.
How many of the first type are there? Well, first of all, how many rounds are there?
There are 10 rounds.
10 rounds. How many of the first type are rounds?
There are 6 of the first type.
So I assume then that 4 are the Aguila 9mm, is that right?
That's correct.
And that appears, those 4 rounds appear to be the same type of rounds as the shell casings that you recovered, is that right?
They do.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Can you redirect?
How can you identify, I guess, the brand of a shell casing or live round?
The head stamp, which is the flat portion at the back of the ammo or of the casing, will have a brand and typically also a number which will indicate the millimeter or the caliber of ammunition.
Is this common amongst the manufacturers of ammunition?
Yes.
Do you know anything about the Aguila brand of ammunition?
I don't.
Is it fair to say that these were not the only Aguila rounds in existence?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that they probably meant that there were probably a large number of them manufactured?
Yes.
I would object to that, Judge. I don't know how she know that.
Response?
I'll withdraw the question.
The jury will disregard that question.
How many, how many different brands of ammunition have you seen in your career as a crime scene investigator?
More than I could probably number.
Do you often see, the same brands or multiple brands? Let me think, hold on, I'll withdraw that question. Have you seen the same brand at more than one scene?
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you, Judge.
All right, you can step down. Just take your personal belongings, please. I'll ask Bailiff Wooten to move the exhibits to the front of the bench. And please call your next witness.
Brittany Barrington.
Okay. I think she's trying to get your attention, one of the bailiffs. She needs a restroom break. All right. Let me just notify your advocate to have your witness wait outside. Let's take a 10-minute restroom break, please.
Yes, sir.
I will need all the jurors to step out, please. Leave your notepads and pens. Remember your precautionary instructions. Minutes or less recess as soon as the jury is ready. So if counsel needs a restroom break, take it now. Mr. Ford is with the deputies. right, swear in your witness, please.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the, put your hand down now. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Brittany Barrington. I am a crime scene supervisor with the Gwinnett County Police Department's Crime Scene Investigations Unit.
What education training do you have that allows you to do that job?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in social and criminal justice. I have a master's in education. I am also post-certified as a crime scene investigator with the state of Georgia. I also have various certificates through the forensic community as well.
Did you participate in the investigation of a homicide or death in Yellow River Park on July 28th of 2021?
Yes.
What was your role in that investigation?
As a supervisor, I am at the scene to make sure everything is flowing okay, everything is getting done how it needs to get done. We have a lead crime scene specialist that is their scene that they work. I am responsible for what actions they are doing and also a go-between between us and detectives.
What's a Pharaoh?
So a Pharaoh is a computer program that does a live 3D scan of any type of environment that we need to document what's going on at the scene. So it is a scanner that scans wherever we are, indoors, outdoors, and it's for investigative purposes. It helps us with documentation, capturing what maybe photography wouldn't capture, just an overall sense of how the scene is in like a real version, like real you're there street version.
Can you spell that for us?
It's just F-A-R-O.
Thank you.
And are you trained and certified in how to use the Pharaoh?
Yes, I was trained and certified in February of 2020.
And did you utilize it in Yellow River Park in July of 2021?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to generate measurements at the request of the DA's office?
Yes, I was.
To show you what's marked as States Exhibits 22 and 23. What are States Exhibits 22 and 23?
22 and 23 are still photos of the Pharaoh scan of a particular scan that has measurements from two particular points to one singular point. It's a point to point.
And are those true and accurate stills of the ones that you generated?
Yes.
Has anything been added to them, taken away from them?
No.
Your Honor, say would tender States Exhibits 22 and 23, which are still photographs of Pharaoh scans.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 22 and 23 are admitted without objection.
Offhand, do you know what's Pharaoh mean? Is it an acronym?
It's just the business name.
1 second so I can publish these to the jury. Publishing States Exhibit. Thank you, that's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
Ms. Barrington, I don't have a lot of questions, but I do have
Some, good afternoon. Let me ask this first question. When was that request made by the district attorney's office for you to use the Faro system?
The specific to get the measurements part, or that was about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And what's after the measurements part?
What do you mean?
You indicated to get the measurements part. Is there a different process with Faro after the measurements part?
No.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, a request was made for you to get the distance between where the blood pool is, where the decedent's head is, and where the rounds are. Is that right?
The only request that I was given was for the 2 casings to the head.
2 casings to the head. You weren't given the request for the distance of the casings from one another. Is that right?
That's right.
And how often do you use the Faro system in a homicide case?
For Faro, we use it for every homicide case.
Every homicide case. Does that mean that you produce those type of photos with the measurements for every case, or is that something that information is taken but is not produced unless specifically requested?
That's correct. We actually have a system that is accessible that you can do an actual live version of what measurements you specifically want. We provide that to whoever wants that so they can create their own measurements. But if they specifically request certain measurements, then we can go and do those measurements, do a print screen, and print it out for whoever's requesting it.
Got it. Thank you very much, Ms. Barrington. Thank you, Judge.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you so much. You may step down.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
Jimenez.
Good afternoon. If you'll watch your step coming up, and if you will be seated comfortably in the chair and position yourself directly in front of the microphone for me, please.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Kia Jimenez, and I'm a crime scene investigator with Gwinnett County Police Department.
And what training and education do you have that allows you to do this job?
I have a Bachelor's of Arts and a Bachelor's of Science from the University of Georgia. I also have completed a 5-month on-the-job field training program that allows me to do all of the specifics related to crime scene. In addition to that, I do hold post-certification through the state of Georgia, non-sworn, as a crime scene technician.
Do you have special training or knowledge as it relates to firearms?
I do. In addition to the state-mandated post-training, we are given opportunities to train in other specializations. And I have taken shooting reconstruction courses, I apologize. Along with advanced shooting reconstruction, I am also trained through the ATF, the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, to do triage and analysis of casings to do presumptive matches between casings that are fired from firearms.
Have you ever been admitted as an expert in the state of Georgia as it relates to firearms and or the triage of shell casing or identification of shell casings?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
At least twice.
Your Honor, the state would tender CSI Jimenez as an expert in firearms and the identification of shell casings.
May we take up something outside the presence of the jury, Judge?
Yes, all right, members of the jury, sometimes when objections are made, the nature of it requires me to consider it outside your presence. So I'll ask you to leave your notepads and pens in your chair and please step out with the bailiff.
Can I have you just step down and step out while we address this one issue?
Yes, let me have the witness step off the witness stand, please.
course.
If you'll just wait outside. All right, Mr. Lawrence Lewis, I will hear from you on the state's motion to have her tendered as an expert in, repeat that for me again?
Firearms and identification and shell casing identification.
Firearms and shell casing identification?
I think it's a triage identification, Your Honor. That was the specific.
Well, tell me now specifically how you're seeking to tender her.
Shell casing, triage, and identification.
Nothing with firearms.
Well, firearms and triage. I thought you were asking me to clear up the last part. Your Honor. Firearms and shell casing, triage, and identification.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means.
I'm
but
not sure what it means either, Judge, so that's what, I mean, listen, is she being presented as an expert to say shell casings come out of semi-automatic weapons? I don't have any objection to that. Is she going to identify that these shell casings were fired? I don't have any objection to that because there's a firing pin mark on the face plate, the whatever it's called, I forget, the head stamp. So I'm not quite sure what she's going to testify to, but I couch it in this terms. 2 witnesses ago, the person with the master's degree said the distance itself of shell casings is not pertinent.
Okay. Do you want to proffer her outside the presence of the jury? First of all, I don't know what it means to be an expert in shell casing, triage, and identification, so.
Neither do I, Judge.
So I'm gonna need,
I can clear that up, Your Honor.
okay, through the witness, so. Let's bring the witness back in. Let me have Mr. Norris Lewis for the state clarify for the court more clearly how he seeks to tender the witness as an expert, and I'll let you, Mr. Lawrence Lewis, cross-examine her outside the presence of the jury, and then hopefully I will be prepared to rule.
That's fine, Judge.
All right, and before we resume the question, Christine, can you back up for me to the beginning? And let me just review
To the beginning of the question that she, yeah.
about her background. Let me go back to that. Okay, keep going. Okay, a little bit more. Okay. She remains under oath. Let me have you clarify for the court, please, through questioning of how you seek to tender her as an expert, Mr. Norris Lewis.
You mentioned a firearms a course that you took in shell casing, triage, and identification given by ATF. What did they teach you in that class?
So it was 3 separate courses. The primary course was a triage course, which basically teaches you to identify class characteristics or overall characteristics of a head stamp of a casing, so that you can group them into groups that can then be examined by someone who is higher trained to determine whether or not those are likely to have been fired from the same weapon. After that, there's an acquisitions course, which is the process of entering those casings onto the NIBIN or the IBIS system. After that, there's a correlations course. That course is what I'm trained in all the others, but that one is the one that actually gives me the ability to compare casings. So that course, you are basically taught to take casings, and they are run through the NIBIN system. You receive a, top however many options of casings that could be potential matches based on those class characteristics that were done way before. But then we actually have to, as correlators, go in and compare the individual striations that are left onto the head stamp by the firearm when the actual casing is ejected from the gun. And we're comparing those and saying, like, are these actually going to be leads? Are they going to be related? Now, after that, they get sent to a firearm examiner for confirmation, but we are not, that's done by the GBI. The ATF gives us the ability to make those leads without any oversight because of the training we've had.
So based on your training and your knowledge, are you able to compare two rounds that have been fired from a weapon and make at least a preliminary determination on whether or not they were fired from the same weapon?
Yes. A confirmation does have to occur after, but the preliminary I can do.
And are there characteristics that you observe on those fired shell casings that determine whether or not you make that determination that you're able to make?
Yes, there are characteristics on the actual shell casing that allow you to make that comparison.
And also, so I can be complete with this, are you familiar with semi-automatic handguns?
Yes.
How have you come to be familiar with semi-automatic handguns?
When we began our, firearms or our NIBIN unit, I was tasked with being the original person to assist in creating the system of test firing weapons and then entering those into an older system that we have. But through that, I was, consistently, weekly getting firearms from our evidence unit, having to take them to our firing range to be test fired, taking those casings and then entering them into our system. So, I handled, in my career, several hundreds, if not thousands of firearms.
Are you familiar with the Sig Sauer P365?
Yes, I actually had a case earlier this year with a P365.
Have you had occasion to test fire a Sig Sauer P365?
I believe so. I don't have the exact numbers, but yes, that firearm was test fired in January this year.
Do you have any idea how many times it was test fired by you?
I do not. We typically do 2 test fires, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I can't say exactly.
Are you familiar with the type of fire, the type of mark the firing pin from a Sig Sauer P365 typically leaves on a shell casing?
Typically, yes.
I don't have any other questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination by Lawrence Lewis.
I don't have any cross-examination questions, Judge. And again, I didn't want to interrupt Mr. Lewis.
If preliminarily what she's going to say is the same firearm fired both shell casings, I'll stipulate to that. But I think it's a little bit more than that as I sat and listened, and I think
that she may be testifying as an expert as to this specific
weapon being the likely weapon that fired both of the shell casings. As it relates to the same firearm firing both shell casings, I'll stipulate to that.
But it seems like she has some more, and
I don't know that she needs to qualify as an expert to triage, but I don't have any objection, Judge.
So let me make sure I understand your argument. So are you withdrawing your objection to her being tendered as an expert as presented by the state.
I don't even know if it came out as an objection. I asked to take up something outside the presence of the jury because I didn't even understand I understand triage in a landing zone, military type situation. I didn't understand what she was testifying to. I don't have any objection in terms of what has been proffered, her being an expert to testify as to what has been proffered she's going to testify to. I don't have any objection.
All right, but what I don't want to do is bring the jury in and then she starts testifying to something that's not exactly what you think. So please proffer her so we can clarify that on any issue that you might object to.
I don't see me objecting to any issue that sounds like one gun fired both of these shell casings. I don't see me objecting to anything involving her expert opinion as to the weapon that fired these shell casings being this P blah, blah, blah gun. Anything else is going to have to come in my mind after this moment, but at this moment, I don't foresee me asking her any questions that would require me to challenge her expertise as the prosecutor has offered it to the court to this point. Thank you, Judge.
All right, I'll bring the jury in and I will have her so tendered as an expert as requested by the state. Are both sides ready?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right, let's bring the jury in. So I'll need you to make your motion again when the jury comes in from the state.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I'll rule on it at that time, please. All right, I'll have the state resume its examination, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would tender CSI Jimenez as an expert in firearms and in shell casing, triage, and identification.
No objection, Judge.
All right, hearing no objection, she will be so tendered.
Are you familiar with the operation of a semi-automatic handgun?
I am.
I guess, have you fired semi-automatic handguns before?
I have.
Have you fired a lot of semi-automatic handguns?
I have.
I have. I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 30, and I will fill in the numbers. What is State's Exhibit 30?
This is a USB containing videos showing the mechanical operation of a firearm when it is fired and the different components of a firearm.
Have you viewed those videos?
I have.
Would they assist you in explaining to the jury the complete function of a semi-automatic handgun?
They would provide a visual representation.
Your Honor, I would tender State's Exhibit 30 and the videos A, B, and C for demonstrative purposes.
I don't have any objection, Judge.
All right, is it narrated by this witness?
The videos do contain audio, but the audio will not be published to the jury, and I will allow CSI Jimenez to narrate the videos.
All right, so any exception to that, Mr. Lawrence Lewis?
Thank you, Judge.
All right, so that the record is clear, only the video portions of State's 30, A, B, and C are being admitted for the record. No audio is admitted by the court.
There's a pointer right in front of you.
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit 30A.
Okay, so here we are just going to be going over some of the principal components of a firearm. So this is a semi-automatic handgun. The portion that's racked back to actually load the round into the chamber is called the slide. That's at the top of the firearm. All right, the grip module is just a portion of the actual handle that you're going to be using. This back portion is the tang. That's just going to be a rest against the, I guess, webbing area of your hand. And of course, everyone knows the trigger. The plastic piece around is the trigger guard to prevent any accidental misfires. The hammer, this is going to be the portion of the firearm that actually comes back when the trigger is pulled, that will actually push the firing pin in. Now you have a rear sight and a front sight so that you can actually see what you're looking at when you're firing the weapon. A slide catch to keep that slide from moving and operating correctly. The grip panel is just the same portion of the handle that actually gives you some traction on it. The muzzle is where the projectile is going to eject. The accessory rail is for any lights or accessories that you want to add to your firearm. The front strap is just additional gripping so that you can have a good hold on the firearm. And then the magazine goes into the grip, and that's where the intact cartridges or bullets actually go. The magazine release ejects that from the firearm itself so you can load it. Then you have your take down lever up top. This is the magazine actually ejecting. And this is the inside view of that same firearm, showing the firing pin that I mentioned earlier that's controlled by the hammer, the barrel, which is where the actual bullet travels, the recoil guide rod that just actually makes the slide move back and forth, and the recoil spring is the spring around it. All right, so the magazine gets placed into the firearm here. So you can see the magazine body as well as the opening at the top that holds the intact cartridge. And that's just the intact cartridges as viewed from a side of the magazine. The spring at the base and the follower, those actually push the intact cartridges up towards the barrel of the gun.
State's Exhibit 30B.
Now, this video is going to show basically what I just narrated, but that cycle of the projectile actually being fired. So the intact cartridges in the magazine are being pushed up by the spring lever, and then they are going to be loaded into the barrel of the gun after each round is ejected. So you have a new round. Actually, let's let this one finish. This cartridge that at the very top that has been fired is going to eject out of the side port. A new one is going to go up into the barrel, and then as you pull the trigger, the hammer is going to make the firing pin actually hit the breech or the center fire cup of the cartridge, and that's what's going to ignite the gunpowder inside of the intact cartridge, which will propel the bullet down the barrel. After that happens, we saw midway through the video that the casing that the bullet is housed within is ejected out of the ejector port located on the side of the firearm. And then the cycle starts over again.
States 30C.
And here we just have a better view of the firing process. So the magazine, you have a chamber or a round in the chamber, your hammer back at the back, your firing pin is the cylindrical object with the spring around it, the cartridge, and then you have the barrel that it's going to be coming through. So this gray material, that is your gunpowder. You have the case, which is the gold or yellowish casing around the gunpowder, and then the bullet itself. So when the trigger is pulled, the firing pin is going to come back, and then it will hit the primer, which ignites the gunpowder, propels the projectile down the barrel. As we see here, you get an explosion of gases because that is a very small environment with a lot of combustible materials. So you have this gunpowder that's going to come out of the firearm at the barrel site and also out of the ejector port when the casing is ejected.
And does, and I've paused it at the 43-second mark. What we see is what looks like sparks and particulate and smoke coming out of the muzzle. Does that travel a certain distance and after it leaves the muzzle?
So it depends on conditions, of course, but typically if you have anything outside of like a 6 to 10 foot radius, you're not going to get a lot of visible markings. But really when you get like powder deposition on a surface, it has to be relatively close range.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Sig Sauer P365?
Yes,
Is it a semi-automatic handgun?
it is.
Does it operate in that fashion?
It does.
To show you what's marked as States Exhibit 31. What is States Exhibit 31?
This appears to be a replica of a semi-automatic handgun. It's about the same size as a P365. Now this appears to be for a Glock 43, but they are of similar size and their operation would be the same as this firearm.
And would that help you explain your expert testimony to a jury?
Yes, in relations to, the size of the firearm or the size of a P365.
I would tender States Exhibit 31 for demonstrative purposes.
I don't have any objection to that, Judge.
All right, States 31 is admitted without objection.
Now, this replica weapon has what appears to be an ejection port on the right side. Is that typical of firearms?
It is pretty typical. You can have firearms that are left side ejecting, but usually it's going to be the right.
I guess are more firearms manufactured, as far as you know, that are right side ejecting versus left side ejecting?
Yes, that is correct. There are more that are right side ejecting.
A couple more, a lot more?
A lot more.
Now, you've test fired a number of firearms.
Yes.
About how many firearm test fires do you think you've conducted?
Personally, probably about 100 myself, but I have been present for thousands easily.
Okay. And obviously each semi-automatic firearm ejects a cartridge casing?
They should, yes.
Well, unless there's a malfunction.
Unless there's a malfunction, yes.
Now, describe what a malfunction means in the firing process of a semi-automatic handgun?
So you can have a malfunction where the barrel itself or where the slide doesn't completely rack back, and you might get, a stovepipe. Like say if you were to grab the slide while it's actively being fired, you could have the casing get stuck into the barrel so it doesn't fully eject. You may also just have some that don't eject because of the way that you handled it. But most of the time they should eject properly. Damage can contribute to a malfunction.
And is there a way to get that shell casing out if there is a malfunction?
Oftentimes, yes,
But sometimes no?
but sometimes no, without taking the entire firearm apart.
Fair. I guess let's circle back to July 28th, 2021. Did you directly participate in the investigation of a homicide that occurred in Yellow River Park on the previous day?
I did.
What was your role in that investigation?
I was contacted by the supervisor on scene, Supervisor Brittany Barrington, and was requested to come to the scene to recover or to retrieve those fired cartridge casings that had been located by Specialist Musey or Hamill, and to take those back to our unit to be uploaded into our system for a comparison against each other.
Did you collect those shell casings from Musey?
I did.
To show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 21. What is State's Exhibit 21?
This is the package, and if I can see these. Yes, these are the 2 casings that I received at the scene from Specialist Musey.
And how do you know?
Well, we have a pretty thorough chain of custody also. So it has a placard showing the case number, where they were collected, but also just visually looking at them, they are the same mark, the same caliber, same color as the cartridges that I actually looked at.
And I will now show you State's Exhibit 24 through 29. You recognize State's Exhibits 24 through 29, and could you just describe each one for the jury?
Okay. I recognize the item in them, but the photographs are not mine. I believe these belong to Specialist Musey.
But are they, what is the item in them?
The item in them is going to be the 2 cartridge casings that I recovered from her at the scene. In fact, I can see the truck's lab bench in the background. And so this is going to be photographs of the 2 Aguila 9mm fired cartridge casings that I collected and entered.
Are they accurate depictions of the shell casings that were turned over to you and that are physically present in State's Exhibit 21?
They are.
Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibits 24 through 29, a series of photographs of the aforementioned shell casings in State's Exhibit 21.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 24 through 29 are admitted without objection.
Show you what's admitted, maybe, as State's Exhibit 24. What is State's Exhibit 24?
This is a photograph of one of the 2 9mm shell casings that we were discussing previously, along with a note in Specialist Musey's handwriting, just designating this as evidence marker number 1.
So it's typical in CSI's lab amongst the analysts, investigators. Never know what to say.
Specialist.
That's not, never mind. Amongst the specialists, it's common to EM is evidence marker and 1 is obviously 1.
That is correct.
And
That's the time that
09,
was
49
recovered.
hours,
That's
was
correct.
collected. And State's Exhibit 25.
If these are in order, this should be a side profile of that same first casing with a measuring device for scale.
State's Exhibit 26.
And this is going to be a top-down photograph of the head stamp showing that one of the two casings as a Gila 9mm.
And does it depict the firing pin stamp in the primer left by the weapon that fired it?
Yes, if you look inside of the centermost circle, you have a circular shape, which is going to be the firing pin impression. This portion right here is going to be the firing pin impression.
And what characteristics of that allow you to compare it to the mark made by, or let me rephrase that. What characteristics of that allow you to compare it to a mark left on a different shell casing?
So the shape of it as well as striations found within it. Now with head stamps, we're not just looking for firing pins, we will look for ejector marks as well. And ejector marks are found on this outer rim, and here is a clearly defined rectangular ejector mark, which will have individual striations in it as well that can be compared against another casing.
Skip out of order here and show you State's Exhibit 29. What is State's, or describe for the jury what's in State's Exhibit 29.
So this is another photograph of a head stamp of one of the two casings depicting that same circular shaped firing pin and also an ejector mark rectangular in fashion like the one we saw previously.
And in your opinion, based on your knowledge, training, and experience, can you tell whether or not these marks were left by the same weapon?
From these photographs, not 100%. I would need a microscopic image, but I did see them microscopically when they were uploaded, and they did appear to be from the same weapon.
And are you able to tell what type of weapon left that mark?
Unfortunately, no. I can't testify to what weapon it would have left it. Characteristics of the weapon, absolutely, but a firearms examiner would have to give that specific information.
Is it consistent with the characteristics of any weapon that you're familiar with?
Yes, it is consistent with a P365.
Just so it's complete, I will show you State's Exhibit 27. Describe for the jury what that is.
This is a photograph that was taken by Specialist Musey of the second fired cartridge casing with evidence marker number 2 written beside.
And lastly, State's Exhibit 28.
And this is going to be another photograph of one of the two casings, I'm assuming the second based on the sequence, just showing the scale of that casing.
And I guess you said striations on the side?
The striations on the side of the casing?
I might be misquoting you.
Yes, no, we don't do comparisons of any striations on the side. Now, there may be a portion of the extractor might leave a marking on the underside of the rim here, but I don't see that in this particular photo.
Okay. When you observed them microscopically, did you see anything about
We don't typically use those as the sole comparison.
But what you were able to observe was enough to conclude that they have the same characteristics as being fired from a P365?
Yes, I mean, they do have characteristics that would be consistent with that.
And whether or not they were, irrespective of the weapon they were fired from, the two shell casings were left by the same weapon.
They do appear, yes, they do appear to be similar and that they look like they came from the same firearm.
Did you take part in any other part of the investigation of this particular homicide?
Yes, I processed a vehicle that was brought in relation to this case.
What condition was that vehicle in?
When it was received, it appeared to have severe charring and burn marks throughout and on the exterior of the vehicle. There was no visible tag. The VIN number had been essentially obliterated. The glass was melted into the car. It looked like it had been on fire for a good period of time.
Were you able to determine, I guess, where that vehicle came from, what kind of vehicle it was?
In terms of where it came from, that would be a question for the investigator or the officer that brought it in. However, we were able to identify a VIN number on the engine compartment of the vehicle that we were able to trace back to I believe, a Nissan Versa, if I might reference my report.
You may, if it will refresh your recollection.
Yes. That was actually part of the detective's report, but it was a 4-door hatchback, and we were able to run the VIN number, but the actual make and model can be verified with the detective if necessary. But there was a Nissan emblem on the inside of the vehicle, and the VIN number 3N1BC1CP1CL364033 did return to a Nissan.
So it did return to a registered vehicle in the state?
It did.
As far as you know.
It did, as far as I know. I do not know the details of the registration, though.
Understood. Show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 32 through 37.
Thank you.
Can you describe what we're looking at in State's Exhibits 32 through 37?
Yes, these are photographs that I did take of the vehicle in its state when it was received by our crime scene investigations unit. We documented the exterior, we being myself. I documented the exterior of the vehicle, the interior, and we also sifted through the debris inside for any items of possible evidence.
Were you able to locate any items of possible evidentiary relevance?
We located a Nissan emblem, which was outside of the VIN, the only identifying information that we had at the time. We located that amongst the ash and debris in the floorboard in the front console area. We also located an aerosol can and a, I believe, red-colored coffee cup that were underneath the seats. We weren't sure of their evidentiary value, but those were the things that we could identify in the vehicle.
And I'll go back to 32 through 37.
Yes.
Are those true and accurate depictions of the vehicle as it was in the evidence bay at Gwinnett County CSI?
Yes, they are.
Has anything been added to them, removed from them, they've been altered?
They don't appear to have been.
They're all true and accurate depictions?
Yes.
Stay with tender, State's Exhibits 32 through 37.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 32 through 37 are admitted without objection.
Show you what's marked as, or admitted as.
Are you asking to publish?
I am, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
You may publish.
Publishing State's Exhibit 32, which has been admitted. Can you describe for the jury what we're looking at?
Yes, this is a photograph from the rear driver's side window frame looking into the front cab of the vehicle. So here you are going to see what is left of the front driver's seat, front passenger seat, and then the dashboard components of the vehicle, as well as the insides of the door. You can see that the glass has been melted into the car, and most of the upholstery has been basically burnt to ash.
Showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 33.
This is a side profile photograph of that same portion of the vehicle. Here you have the front passenger, here is the front driver, and then this is the windshield that is melted over the dash component. However, you can see that all that's left are metal frames and pieces of glass, and then all of the combustible materials have been turned to ash.
State's Exhibit 34. State's Exhibit 34.
This is a top-down photograph of the front driver's seat. Underneath you can see the, I believe, red-colored cup that located inside the vehicle. And then you just see a better view of some of the ashen material throughout.
State's Exhibit 35.
This is an overall photograph of the engine compartment of the vehicle, with the focus of it being here inside of the engine compartment. This steel impressed VIN plate is where we were able to find the VIN number to the vehicle. It was of course covered in ash, so it has been removed here, but the VIN number to the vehicle is impressed upon it.
State's Exhibit 36.
This is the back end of the vehicle, just showing the state of the exterior. All paint appears to have been burned off of the vehicle, and also there is no intact license plate or even bumper on the back of the vehicle.
Now, a license plate in the state of Georgia, do you know what it's made of?
A license plate? Oh, I do not.
Do you know whether or not it's metal?
It is metal. It's, I'm assuming, an aluminum material, but I don't know the exact composition of it.
Based on your observations, did you find a charred or burned license plate?
No, there was nothing inside the vehicle that appeared to resemble a license plate.
Okay. Lastly, State's 37.
This is the front end of the vehicle, again showing that all of the plastic and rubberized components of the vehicle have been burned off.
A vehicle that is, well, let me ask you this. Did you check for the things did people think a CSI would go looking for DNA, fingerprints? Did you look for those things here?
So we did rifle through, myself and Supervisor Barrington. We went through the ash and debris to see if we could find anything that was not entirely burned, so that we could attempt to retrieve DNA or fingerprints. However, unfortunately, every item in there had a layer of soot on the outside. And when you have an item that has been burned, it takes away from the viability of getting fingerprints and DNA off of those items. When you think about fingerprints, fingerprints are mostly water. So if you think about if you sit a cup of water out on a table on a hot day, eventually it's going to evaporate. The same thing happens with fingerprints. Now, if you introduce a very large heat source or a fire, that's going to happen more quickly. So fingerprints in a fire situation are very difficult, if not impossible, to recover. And DNA is part of a combustible material, flesh, bone, those sorts of things. And unfortunately, fire degrades those pretty severely in most cases. So we weren't able to find anything that resembled fingerprints or DNA in our search.
And I guess it's fair to say, just based on observation, that this was a fairly hot fire?
That is safe to say.
Was there any other duties that you performed in relation to this investigation?
I received, I believe the following day, a bag that was recovered by Investigator Smith that contained an aluminum, what appeared to be license plate from another location. I don't know the location where it was recovered, that did appear to have burns on it as well.
When you say a license plate, do you mean like a vanity plate or a Georgia-issued registration license plate?
Both. So there was a Georgia-issued license plate that I wasn't able to see anything on because it was just metal at that time. There was a plate, I guess the plastic decals, decorative plates that was around it, that I was able to get a name off of, a brand name, but we weren't able to get any kind of tag number or anything like that, because the way that license plates work, at least in Georgia, is the top layer is a foil, because that's what makes it reflective when people are behind you with their headlights, and foil burns really easily. So that portion was gone, but the actual, body of the plate was still there.
Is it the foil that contains the identifiable numbering?
Yes, unfortunately.
I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
You cross-examination?
The demonstrative,
It's under the exhibit up here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Good afternoon. Can I call you Investigator Jimenez?
That's fine.
Thank you very much. I don't have a lot of questions, but let me start with this one. You indicated that a lot more of the semi-automatic guns have a right side ejecting. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do we call it a right side ejection port?
It's a right side ejection port.
Fantastic. Okay, and a right side ejection port as opposed to a left side ejection port. Is that right?
That's correct.
And is that because most shooters are right-handed and the shell casing is going to be ejected away from them as opposed to left-handed, or do you know?
I don't know. I can't say to the design rationale.
I don't know is a fine answer.
Stovepipe. Tell the jury what a stovepipe is.
So a stovepipe is basically when you go to fire a weapon, when the trigger is actually pulled. If for some reason the slide of the firearm is manipulated during that operation, so say that you grab the slide as it's actually racking back or as the trigger is being pulled, when it's going to stop that process of the cartridge casing being ejected midway through. So you'll get the cartridge casing halfway in the ejector, but caught in the gun. So it'll be sticking out. The stovepipe, I've heard, is referring to the way that it typically looks, with it sticking out like a chimney or something like that.
Okay, now that's a mouthful.
Yes.
I want to understand.
Of course.
Okay. I want you to tell me, don't let me tell you. Does stovepipe just mean that the fired cartridge casing does not eject out of the gun?
It means that it doesn't eject fully, so it'll be partially hanging out of the
Okay.
ejector port.
Does somebody have to touch the slide in order for that to happen?
It's not mandatory. That is the scenario where you see it most of the time because that directly interferes with the slide, opening all the way so that it can be ejected, but it can happen if there's a malfunction with the slide by itself.
All right, and it sounds like when there's a stovepipe, I'm gonna call it the back of the fired cartridge casing, which would be what's it called? The
head stamp?
head stamp. It sounds like the head stamp would be stuck in the gun while the hollow portion is facing out. Is that right?
So it kind of, oh gosh, I'm trying to demonstrate it. If you have the casings.
You're removing that from what exhibit? So we're clear.
Judge, this is State's Exhibit number 21. I just opened it. I haven't removed it because I think it's attached in here. It may just be attached with some tape though, so
Okay.
we may be able to remove it both from. I've removed one of the cartridge casings. It's marked EM number 1 from State's Exhibit number 21, and I'm going to ask for permission to remove the actual cartridge casing, the fire cartridge casing. This is what you need, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that
here we
and
go.
the
Fantastic. I'm
replica.
going to give you both of them. There you go.
I'll take that
Okay,
there.
sorry.
No, that's all right. Just have it, always wearing gloves. All right, so when you have a stovepipe, typically you are going to, just for the sake of the demonstration, you are going to have the cartridge casing and it's going to be partially ejected. So let me do it I'm trying to think of the best way to have this represented for you guys. You're going to have a portion of that cartridge sticking out, but the rest of it is going to still be inside of the firearm with this slide preventing it from exiting. So where it falls on this half of the cartridge casing, there's no way for that to be controlled. It can be, midway down, it could be even like on the very tail end so that, most of it's still in the firearm, or it could be near this head stamp crimping where most of it is hanging out of the firearm.
And how do you clear it? Can you pick it out sometimes?
So you'll have to actually rack the slide back to have it open the rest of the way so that you can get this out.
All right, sometimes you can do it that way. If I understood your testimony, sometimes you'd have to take the slide apart. You have to take the gun apart?
Yes, you would have to take the firearm apart.
Okay.
Let me use this since you had it.
Since it's out, let me just use it for a second. Judge, and I have what's part of the exhibit. It was marked EM number 1. I have some questions about this. If the fired shell casing, right, is right here, can we tell if this is a Sig Sauer P365? Can we tell if the gun is in this position, or this position, or this position?
Based on where the round is?
No, shell casings and the whole process of a firearm being fired creates basically a controlled explosion, but it's only controlled in that the projectile is going to go down the barrel and so on. As far as the casing that is ejected from the firearm, you could shoot the same firearm from the same position multiple times and have them land in multiple different locations because it's just going to happen at random. It's going to go in the direction of the ejector port, so it's going to go to the right typically, but I have had guns that will, eject straight up, which, can be misleading, with the actual where the location of the ejector port is, but yeah, you can't tell where the gun 100% is based on it.
So if this were a 6-hour P365, I can fire 5 rounds. One might land at the judge. One might land over at the deputy by the door. One might land right here on the floor.
That's correct. And you also have external forces that could play a part of it, bouncing off of the ground, people walking through the scene potentially, moving them, things like that.
I'm just using an example right here. I think this is as controlled as you can get. There's no
Yes,
flames
this
here.
situation of, you might have bounce on the ground, but
And if I fire this 5 times, one's gonna land at the judge, might land at the
Might.
judge. One might land up in the lighting fixture if it goes up. Is
yeah,
that
that's
right?
possible.
One might land over by the deputy. Is that right?
That's
One
possible.
might land behind me with the woman in the yellow.
Now, I mean, you distance might be a thing. I can't say like how far they will fly because you do have limitations on the explosion, but as far as directionality, yes, they can go multiple directions.
So it's almost impossible to predict from looking at where the shell casing is, where the gun was when the gun was fired. Is that fair to say?
You might be able to get a general, but you can't get an exact.
And when we say general, we know that if it's a right ejection port, the gun was somewhere to the right.
Yeah,
To the left of where the round is.
typically, yes.
Right. After that, we have no clue.
Personally, no.
Let me return this, Judge. Let me
Put this back together.
Thank you. Investigator Jimenez, you testified that the rounds that you examined have the characteristic of a 6-hour P365. Is that right?
Yes, they are consistent.
Okay, and I'm just trying to get some sense, if you can tell me what other guns may have fired those 2 rounds?
Oh gosh, I can't give you an exhaustive list, but I mean, so those are consistent in that 6-hour typically has a circular firing pin. There are other firearms that have circular firing pins and similar ejector markings, but they're not going to be similar in their individual striations. But what we're doing is class characteristics. Class characteristics like firing pin will tell you that, or if you look at a 6-hour, then they're going to have circular, whereas like Glock will have a rectangular or D-shaped firing pin. So it's consistent with it. That doesn't mean that it's not consistent with other makes that have circular firing pins as well, but the individual specific striations are what are going to make it, those two linked together.
Okay, and what I heard you say is all 6 hours. Is that what you said? That's what I heard you say, but I'm not sure. You said that all
Many 6 hours. Yeah.
Okay, many. So when we say many, more than 50% of all the models of 6-hour is gonna have those characteristics. Is that right?
In terms of the firing pin itself, yes. Most manufacturers of firearms, they're going to have a design that they go with. So to reference Glocks again, they are exhaustively or exclusively going to use that same shaped firing pin of like a D-shaped after a certain model because that is their trademark. So a lot of other firearm manufacturers do that same thing.
Do you know how many 6-hours fire a 9mm round?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
But 9mm is your most common caliber.
I got you, and I understand you to be saying that a Glock could not have fired these 2 rounds. Is that right?
Based on the characteristics that I saw, no.
And I don't know if Colt, does Colt make a 9mm?
I mean, I believe so, but I don't know off the top of my head theirs. I'm less familiar with Colt.
Okay, and Remington?
Remington?
Yes. Make a 9mm?
Yeah, Remington makes 9mm.
Okay, and so I understand you to be saying in terms of 6 hours, the 2 fired cartridge casings that you examined have the characteristics of a 6-hour.
Yes.
Right. irrespective of this, if it's a 365, 465, 165, it has the characteristics of a Sig Sauer that fires a 9mm, is that right?
Yes.
How many other, I'm gonna call it manufacturers,
my goodness.
Remington, Colt, however many, Desert Eagle.
Right.
I'm not the gun guy. How many other brands of gun had that same characteristic?
Several. I can't give you a number just because there are many off-brands that obviously I wouldn't have an exhaustive knowledge about. You have Russian firearms and things like that that are also going to have circular firing pins, but we don't necessarily see them. But it is going to be several. The circular firing pin shape is common.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Judge.
All right, re-cross-examination.
Done, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You can step down, please. Does anybody on the jury need a break, or shall I call the next witness? All right, let's call your next witness.
Deputy Santa Maria.
I'm sorry, Santa Maria?
Yes.
All right, sir, watch your step coming around. If you will be seated comfortably in the chair and position yourself directly in front of the microphone, please.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Jonathan Santa Maria.
How are you employed?
I'm currently employed with the Columbia County Sheriff's Office.
And are you a post-certified law enforcement officer?
I am.
Deputy Santa Maria, how were you employed in August of 2021?
I was employed with the DeKalb County Police Department.
In your duties, what were your basic duties with DeKalb County?
Just everyday patrol, uniform calls.
And did you receive a call about, and I don't know how DeKalb would have classified it, but about an abandoned or burned vehicle I think it would have been August 1st, 2021.
Yes, sir. I responded to an abandoned vehicle call located at the Hidden Acres National Park.
And what is Hidden Acres National Park?
We have where I used to work, we had several different just parks in the area, located especially in my precinct alone.
Did you respond physically to the scene?
We received a call from a park ranger. I believe his name was Park Ranger Curtis. He called us in reference to a burned vehicle that was abandoned, appeared to have been there for a few days, and I was the one who was dispatched to the location.
Did your, I guess, role in this investigation, were you able to determine how it got there, when it got there?
No.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 39.
You're skipping 38.
I believe 38 was one of the last photographs shown to CSI Jimenez.
Let me confirm with the court reporter. Do you have a 38 marked?
Look up here, but I don't have it written down. Just give me half a second.
No 38 was marked.
This will be it then. I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 38. What is State's Exhibit 38?
That is the vehicle that I was brought to by the park ranger located at the park.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of that vehicle?
Correct.
Has anything been altered about this photograph?
No.
Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibit 38.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 38 is admitted without objection.
Your Honor, if I may publish State's Exhibit 38.
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit 38. Is this the vehicle that you found?
Correct.
What did you do when you got to the scene and found burned up vehicle?
I spoke to Park Ranger Curtis. He informed me that there was a murder that occurred in Gwinnett County, which is just one jurisdiction over from us, very close to the location we were at. He informed me that they were looking for a blue Nissan Versa. I approached the vehicle. I couldn't find any sort of identifying VIN and or tag to identify the vehicle. I did locate a Nissan emblem, which I then looked up the vehicle online and saw that it was matching what I could say was assumed to be the vehicle. That is a Nissan Versa.
And did you contact Gwinnett County?
Correct. I contacted a Gwinnett County sergeant, and he arrived on scene shortly after.
And did you turn the vehicle over to Gwinnett County?
Correct. They had said they were going to obtain it for further investigation.
Did the Gwinnett County Police Department take possession of the vehicle from the scene?
They called their own wrecker service to take it to their lot.
And did you have any other role in this investigation after turning the vehicle over to Gwinnett County?
No.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Is it Deputy Santa Maria?
Correct.
Deputy Santa Maria.
Good afternoon.
Definitely.
Let me start here. How long did you patrol that precinct or area of DeKalb County where the burnt-out vehicle was located?
For that day, or how long I was in?
During the time that you were with law enforcement in DeKalb County?
From October of 2020 to December of 2022.
Okay, more than 2 years, so you were familiar with that area, is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Stone Mountain area near Stevenson High School?
Correct.
I think the nearest school to there is Stevenson Middle, is that right?
I believe that is correct.
Okay, all right, good. How would you describe that area in terms of crime? Low crime area, high crime area, medium? How would you describe it, you being there for 2+ years?
About a medium to high crime area, depending on the area.
Medium to high crime area. A lot of cars being broken into?
Yes, sir.
Cars being taken?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a whole lot of cars? In my mind, it's like Beirut. Do you have a whole lot of burnt out cars where cars are getting burnt out?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Okay, good. In the 2+ years that you were there, how many car fires did you respond to where it was just an abandoned car just burning out of control in the 2.5 years?
This is the only one that I can recall.
Got it. So although there may be car break-ins and car thefts, you don't have too many just sort of cars engulfed in flames. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
When you come upon the vehicle is in the condition as we see in the photograph, right? It's already burnt out. Is that right?
That's correct.
There's no fire trucks there. It's already done. Is that right?
Correct.
Were you able to see if there was any report made at any time in the 48 hours prior to or in the week prior to you discovering the car or somebody pointing out the car to you? Were you able to discern if there was any reports of a car being on fire?
Not that I'm familiar with.
So when you arrive, fire's all done, but you don't know when the car was actually burnt up. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down, sir. Thank you.
Your Honor, if I could request a brief recess so I can plan the rest of the day as well. The rest of the day will be filled, but I just need to take a brief straw poll away to see how schedules are, because I may have to have somebody come back to me.
Do you just need to step out in the hallway to check that?
I can probably do that.
Okay, we'll just be at ease to allow you to do that.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to stand up and stretch, you can.
I'm just gonna grab some water right quick, Judge.
Sure. All right, you ready to call your next witness?
Investigator Stribling?
Afternoon.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Investigator Jason Stribling, Gwinnett County Arson.
And are you also a post-certified law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir.
And what does an arson investigator do?
Primarily, we look at fires that are either suspicious in nature or that the fire department does not know how they started to determine a cause and origin.
How many times have you, or is there any training or education that you received to do that job?
Yes, we have two 80-hour courses, Arson 1 and Arson 2, that we complete at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center. And further of that, the International Association of Arson Investigators has a fire investigation technician certification that we obtain. And I just obtained earlier in the year my certified fire investigator credentials from the IAAI as well, which is roughly a 5-year process.
Were you so assigned, so employed, and so educated in July or August of 2021?
I did not have my CFI at the time, but other than that, yes, sir.
I want to show you what's been previously admitted to State's Exhibit 38. You recognize State's Exhibit 38?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
That's a vehicle that I had a brief encounter with at the GCPD lot.
Is that the same vehicle in State's Exhibit 36?
That is actually the one at the lot at the time I saw it.
That's exactly as you saw it.
Yes, sir.
And in State's Exhibit 35?
That appears to be the engine compartment of the same vehicle.
34?
That is the passenger compartment of that vehicle.
And 32.
And again, another picture of the passenger compartment of that vehicle.
I guess as an arson investigator, someone with your education, background, and experience, what can you tell me about the fire that did this to this vehicle?
The fire appeared to have started on the interior compartment of the vehicle, the passenger compartment. And that's really about as far as I can go on this one. I did not do a full examination of this for an origin and cause investigation. I was there to assist GCPD.
Now, what would a full, and I'm going to put State's Exhibit 32 up. You said the fire appears to have started in the passenger compartment.
Yes, sir.
Is the location where you believe the fire started contained in State's 32?
It's roughly in the front seat area. You can see the oxidation.
There's a pointer right in front of you.
Oh, thank you. You can see the oxidation, the rusting down here at the base. Typically, that's where the high heat would have originated inside of that vehicle. After several days, the oxidation tends to be more and more, and you can kind of follow the pattern back towards that.
Back towards
the area of origin. I'm sorry. Excuse that.
Just stop. It's
Sorry.
Would you describe this fire as intense?
There's nothing that could not burn is left on there, so everything is gone.
Now, you said in a full investigation, there are different things you might have done. As far as you know, where was this car found?
In DeKalb County.
And is there any indication that the fire occurred in Gwinnett County?
Not at all.
As such, would it have been the responsibility of DeKalb County arson investigator to conduct an investigation into the arson?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if they did?
I'm not familiar with that. I don't believe so, but I'm not completely sure.
That's all the questions I have, Investigator Stribling.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Investigator Stribling.
It's sort of interesting what you raised.
someone with Gwinnett County went and picked up the vehicle in its burnt out condition in DeKalb and brought it back to Gwinnett. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. And if there's a normal procedure, I don't necessarily assume that there is, but in that situation, since you're not doing a full investigation, who would be contacting DeKalb? Like, what's the process with that interjurisdictional issue?
I was called over to bring evidence cans that we would take samples in for GCPD. Since it wasn't our investigation, they were requesting those materials that we have. Once I took them there, I asked them if DeKalb was involved, and they were not sure, so I gave them a contact to DeKalb County Arson. I don't know what happened beyond that, though.
Okay, so once you brought over the materials, you didn't actually do any more investigation?
I did a 360 of the vehicle and told them my opinion of just on the 360, but it was not an official full investigation. I didn't take samples or anything that I would have.
So you had been in arson like 6 years at that point?
Roughly.
Okay, so you sort of eyeballed it walking around and you could tell, okay, it got burnt out. Could you tell if there was an accelerant that was used?
No, sir. I could, if we would have, our area of origin, we would have taken a sample and that would have sent off to the lab, and only that lab can tell us whether an accelerant was actually used or not.
I got you. You didn't do that.
No, sir.
And you don't know if DeKalb did that.
I'm not familiar, sir.
And you weren't the point person to get in touch with DeKalb to make sure that they...
I just passed on a contact number.
Thank you very much, Investigator Stribling. Thank you, Judge.
Redirect.
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down and be excused.
Okay.
All right, call your next witness.
Tanya Lang.
All right, good afternoon, Miss Lang. I'm well. Ma'am, just watch your step coming around for me, please. And then take your time, get seated comfortably in the chair. And if you can slide yourself all the way up to that microphone for me, please. Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Tanya Lang.
And Ms. Lang, who is Tori Lang to you?
My granddaughter.
To show you what has previously been admitted. As State's Exhibit number 2.
Over here, Miss Lang, do you see that?
Yes.
Who's depicted in State's Exhibit number 2?
I'm sorry?
Who is that depicted in State's Exhibit number 2?
That's Tori. That's my granddaughter.
Tell me a little bit about your granddaughter, ma'am.
A little bit?
Just a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because we could be a while. Tori was, if I had to sum it up in one word, I would say phenomenal. She was a very intellectually inclined, very smart girl, honor student, AP student, tutored other AP students. She really was a smart girl, but she was witty, she was funny, and the most amazing thing about her, she was so compassionate. She was generous to the nth degree. She just was a phenomenal girl. She really was.
Did she ever live with you?
Yeah.
Did she, at the time she died, did she have a car?
Yes, she did.
What kind of car was it?
It was a, can't remember the name of it. I'm not good with cars. Ask me what color it was, what it looked like on the inside, but don't ask me what it is, make or model. But it was a little blue, oh man, I can't think of the name of it, but it was a little blue car.
Who was the registered legal owner of that car?
I was.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 39. What is State's Exhibit 39? What is it?
It's the title to the car.
Is that a true and accurate copy of the title to your car that Tori drove?
Yes. Yes.
And has anything been added to it, taken away from it? Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibit 39.
I don't have any objection, Judge.
All right, 39 is admitted without objection.
Do you know what happened to your car, Ms. Lang?
I learned that after Tori's passing, we had been searching for the car. And maybe about a week or so after her passing, we learned that the car had been found and it had been burnt. It had been torched.
Also going to show you what's been admitted as, what is labeled as State's Exhibit 40. What is State's Exhibit 40?
Motor vehicle dealer title, reassignment supplement, okay.
I'm sorry, when you're ready to answer, if you would just speak in that microphone for me, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a true and accurate copy of the supplemental title report to your vehicle?
It is.
And is that your name listed as owner?
Yes.
And was this the vehicle that Tori drove?
Yes, the Versa, yes.
Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibit 40.
I don't have any objection, Judge.
All right, 40 is admitted without objection.
I'm not going to make you read it, but is the VIN number located on both of these documents?
Yes.
And when the car was found, did as far as you know, did the officers tell you how they identified the car?
No.
Was it registered in your name?
Yes.
Did you give anyone permission other than Tori, to take that car?
No.
Did you give permission to anyone to incinerate that car?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know the defendant, Austin Ford?
Yes.
Has you ever met him before?
Yes.
Did you know him to be an acquaintance of Tori's?
Yes.
Did he have permission to have, take, or use your car?
No. No, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Judge.
Ms. Lang, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't have a lot of questions, and I don't have any objection to Tori's photo staying up, Judge. After Tori graduated from high school, did she ever live with you?
Yes, she lived between her parents and me. We lived around the corner from each other, so she had two homes.
All right, and when she would stay with you, would she stay for like a week, a month, 6 months, or was it like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday with you, and then the other part of the week she would stay with her mom?
Oh, it was no set timing in that. We shared her.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did she have a key to your home?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. So she had her own room in your home?
She and I shared a room.
Okay, all right. So if it was a Sunday night, it was nothing for you after Tori graduated from high school in 2021, Tori knock on the door and sort of pop up on a Sunday.
Is that fair to say?
Well, Tori, after Tori graduated, I became ill. I have lupus, I have COPD, I have severe rheumatoid arthritis, and I have fibromyalgia and Raynaud syndrome. So Tori spent a lot of time with me outside of what she did, hanging out with her friends and working and stuff like that. So she really became more of my caregiver.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. And then the 14 months in between the time that she graduated high school and she died, about how much of that time did she end up living with you? Was it half the time, 90% of the time?
I have.
About half the time. And prior to her graduating high school, did she spend about half her time with you also while she was in high school?
Not so much.
Not so much. More after she graduated?
Yes.
All right. And during the time when she was staying with you, was she working?
She did.
All right. What?
She always had a job. She always had a job. She was, I guess what you call the word, industrious. She prided herself on being independent. So if I'm not mistaken, my recollection, Tori might have started working when she was about 14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
In July of 2021, when all of this tragedy befell your family, do you recall where Tori was working at that time?
At that time, I do recall, because I really did not like what she was doing, but she was really good at it. She was doing DoorDash.
Okay. She was delivering food.
Yes.
I got you. And in July of 2021, that fateful month, was she living with you then?
No.
Okay.
Not in that era.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. In the 50% of the time that Tori lived with you after high school but before her untimely death, would Austin Ford come over and hang out with her at your home?
Outside, yeah, they'd be hanging out in the car, yeah.
Fair enough. Did Austin Ford ever come into your home during that time between May of 2020 and July of 2021?
No, he did not. No.
Did you
Forbid him from coming in the house, or he just wasn't the type that's knock on the door, pop up and just, hey, I'm here to see Tori?
Oh no, I didn't forbid him. It's just like, I don't know. I guess she knew I wasn't into the kind of music they like to do. You know, they could have came in if they wanted to, but that was their choice.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Thank you very much, Ms. Lang.
You're more than welcome.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Lang, is it fair to say that before Tori graduated from high school, you needed less caregiving than after?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question?
Yes, ask the question a different way. You listed a number of conditions that you're living with.
Right.
Have they caused, your functionality to deteriorate over the years?
Oh, absolutely.
And so while Tori was in high school, did you need less help than the time after Tori graduated from high school?
That's correct. And my condition, they kind of work together. Like if I'm having a lupus flare, it automatically triggers my arthritis. So the two together working, I'm balled up in a knot because the tension, joint pain, stuff like that. But yeah, it was less. It really became real severe with her passing. With her passing, I went into a deep depression, lost a lot of weight, like a whole nother person. My condition just got worse, and I saw therapy. It didn't do a lot of good because everywhere I go, everything I see, like my daughter has a room full of pictures. I can't do that. I can't. I would love to, but I feel like it would be a shrine or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And I just can't bear to look at it because it brings me to that dark place that she's just not here anymore. No.
I understand. Thank you, Ms. Lang.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Judge.
All right, Ms. Lang, thank you so much. Be careful. Please
you.
watch your step coming down. The bailiff will assist you. All right, thank you. All right, please call your next witness.
Eddie Reeves.
All right, good afternoon. Watch your step coming around for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Will be seated and position yourself in front of the microphones, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Eddie Reeves with the Gwinnett County Medical Examiner's Office.
And what is your role with the Gwinnett County Medical Examiner's Office?
I'm an investigator at the Medical Examiner's Office.
And what training and education do you have that allows you to complete those duties?
Prior to working for the Medical Examiner's Office, I was 13 years as a sheriff's deputy in Hall County, where I amassed over 3,000 hours of crime scene schools, blood pattern analysis, wound analysis, things like that. And I've been with the Medical Examiner's Office since 2002.
What are the basic duties, what's the basic role of an investigator at the ME's office?
The investigator will take the call of death from the reporting agency, the police department or hospital. The investigator will decide if it is a case that fits under the Georgia Death Investigation Act and if Gwinnett County has the jurisdiction. The investigator then will obtain information from the caller to see if we need to make a scene evaluation of the case. Cases that include injuries or trauma, unnatural events we would respond to at the scene.
And did you receive a call that warranted the attention of the medical examiner on July 28th, 2021?
Yes, sir, I did.
Imagining that you might have received one, did one of the calls or the call that you received that day involve the body of a young lady found at Yellow River Park?
Yes, it did.
Did you go to the scene?
I did.
What did you do with the scene?
I helped process the scene. I had a trainee with me, so I was instructing her as well. But our function at the scene is to evaluate what, if any, injuries we can see, take photographs, collect any evidence that's pertinent for the medical examiner's office and the medical examiner to rule on cause and manner of death.
And did you do that on that day at Yellow River Park?
I did.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibits 41 to 55.
Judge, can you take up one thing outside of the
Is it something we can address at the bench or not? If not, that's
I
fine.
don't think so, Judge.
Okay. Let me go ahead and make this more of your mid-afternoon break, and when we come back, then plan to go through as close to 5 o'clock or when the state runs out of witnesses today. So let's be in recess until 350, and then we'll go to the end of the day, the end of the court day. Do you need the witness to step down?
No, he's
Okay.
fine, Judge. Judge, respectfully, if I can hand these up to you, 41 through
55?
55. Judge, my obviously photos are going to be shown, Judge. My objection really goes to some of the photos being duplicative. It's got nothing really to do with this witness. Specifically 41 and 49.
Okay, are those the specific ones you want me to look at?
Yes, 41 and 49, though, that's the pairing that I have right now, which is the easiest ones to deal with. Obviously, there are going to be photos that are going to be shown. Some of the photos are going to be before Tori's head is shaved, so we can see stippling or whatever we're going to see. I don't have any objection to the clothing being shown. It's not graphic for me. I think some of this is going to be a little bit graphic for the jury. They've seen a number of photos already in terms of body cam videos and additional videos from the crime scene folk that show how she was found. And a total of 6. I think it's duplicative. I think it's a bit gory, and so I just raised that issue. Obviously, my objection would be to the extent that it's duplicative, to the extent that it's gory, it's especially prejudicial to my client.
Let me hear the state's response.
Your Honor, the determination made by the medical examiner is largely, and a lot of it is based on the autopsy itself and the condition in which the body is found, the circumstances under which the body is found, the manner of the wound. All of those things are necessary for Dr. Terry to explain the findings. It is certainly not the state's intention to make things just simply to introduce exhibits for the purpose of gore. There, with one exception, there will not be any photos of the autopsy itself. Notably, since we're addressing the matter and since the defense attorney has brought up the issue of gore, there is one photo that was not being introduced through Investigator Reeves, but through Dr. Terry, that is of the inside of Tori's skull, that shows the path that the bullet took from entry to the point where it terminated.
Okay, let me have everybody pause because I have 2 sets of photos that are marked 53, 54, and 55 that are not the same. So I've got set A of 53, 54, and 55 and set B of 53, 54, and 55. So I need to know which ones I'm considering.
It's some of it. I'm not really sure how that happened. I think I handed too much to.
Otherwise, I have 41 through 57 with the exception of those 3 that are 2 different sets of 2 different photos. So I need the correct 53, 54, and 55. All right, let Mr. Lewis see, and then take back what you don't want me to consider. And let's not mix them up with what's actually being admitted, so.
53, 54, 55 that the prosecutor's handed to me, which I assume is going to be his real 53, 54, 55. I don't have any objection to, Judge.
Okay. Now you can conclude your argument now that I know what photos I'm looking at, Mr. Norris Lewis.
And there is one photograph, likely if Mr. Lawrence Lewis is arguing is Tori, this is probably the most, but it is one that Dr. Terry specifically asked for to illustrate wound path.
Well, I'm not addressing that if it's not being sought to be tendered by the state right now. I'm not addressing that.
Yes, sir.
Any final word from the defense?
Judge, we're not commenting on that. Judge, respectfully, the photos that you've been handed up, I don't recall from the first trial how many of those photos Dr. Terry needed. Obviously, I think the photos where Ms. Lang's head, where the bullet enters her skull, is going to be needed to testify about stippling, gunpowder, things of that nature. So that part I'm sort of clear on. She will need that. I don't know that she's going to need, if you look at, again, I go back to 41 and 49, I don't know that 41 and 49 are going to be photos that Dr. Terry's going to need. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't have in my mind right now all of her prior testimony, all of the photographs that she used to render her expert opinion. So I have to sort of rely on my first argument that some of the photos, especially, I'm not worrying about the clothing, the photos of not the photos, not any part of the head shavings, the photos where we have blood and the close-up shots of the entrance wound, which I can specifically tell you is 41 and 49, but I want to say that there's at least one other set of the photo of that, of where the bullet would have entered her brain, where it's not shaved, it's not cleaned up.
All right, having considered the state's motion to tender states 41 through 55. Well, you actually said 51 through 55, but you've handed me through 57. So are you seeking to tender through 57? Do you want to see 56 and 57?
I had to renumber on the fly.
55, 54. Okay, those are all the clothing shots.
I don't have any objection to the closing shots.
So you're seeking to tender 41 through 57?
Yes.
All right, having considered the argument of the state to tender states 41 through 57 and the objection from the defense, over objection, I will allow each of the exhibits 41 through 57 to be admitted. And I'm saying over objection, but the defense is not objecting to all of them, but specifically I believe 41 and 47.
49. 41 and 49 is duplicative. And if you hand me those, I can tell you the ones that I think are duplicative, Judge.
Yes.
I understand the court's ruling just to clarify the record.
Sure.
41 and 49. Uh, 47, Judge, and 48. 43 and 45.
Right, so all are being admitted, subject to the objections that are made by the defense, and those objections are noted for the record.
Yes, Judge.
All right, so that gives you probably about 5 more minutes before the jury's gonna come back. Do you all want to take a restroom break?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
All right, 5 minutes. Mr. Ford is back with the deputies, and the witness can step down for a few minutes. Thank you. let me keep. Hyatt, thank you. We're good. I'm sorry. We're good. Thank you so much. All right, you may resume your examination.
We're out of order now. I am going to show Investigator Reeves' series of photographs. They got taken out of order during 1 second. We'll start with what's marked as State's Exhibit 41. What is State's Exhibit 41?
It's a close-up photograph of the injury of Miss Lang, to the injury to the head.
State's Exhibit 42.
Well, I guess what my preference is if you would see if he recognizes them, because they haven't been admitted, but he is testifying to what they actually are. So
I will start over, Your Honor.
thank you.
I'm going to show you what are marked as State's Exhibit 41 through 42 through 57. You take a look at them and tell me if you recognize them.
I do.
Is each one a true and accurate depiction of what's contained in the exhibit?
They are.
Has anything been added to, removed from, changed about the photographs?
No, sir.
Your Honor, State would tender State's Exhibits 41 through 57.
My only objection was addressed already, Judge. That would be my only objection.
All right. States 41 through 57 are admitted subject to the defense's objections that are preserved on the record.
Can you tell me what the purpose of these photographs are?
The investigators at the scene will photo document the victim, the individual at the scene, for documentary purposes and for evidence. The investigator will then attend the autopsy of the individual to take photographs at the direction of Dr. Carol Terry, the medical examiner for Gwinnett County, to photo document the exam, injuries, evidence, etc., that she deems is important during the examination.
Does Dr. Terry go to the scene of an individual death?
Not usually. She has in the past. She relies on her investigators to do that. She obviously, one person could not attend all of those scenes.
So you attended the scene in this death?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you relay whatever observations that you made as well as these photographs to Dr. Terry?
Yes. We briefed Dr. Terry on what we see, what injuries is apparent, with limited manipulation of the individual, so that we can do it in a more controlled environment, such as the morgue when Dr. Terry conducts her examination.
Okay, I'm not going to publish at this time, but I'm going to ask you to describe the contents of State's Exhibit 41.
It's a close-up photograph of the injury to Miss Lang's head. On
State's
the
Exhibit
right side.
42. I'm sorry, did you have more to say?
On the right side of her head.
State's Exhibit 42.
Is an overall of Miss Lang from the waist up at the scene, position of her hands, arms, hair, her clothing, etc.
State's Exhibit 43.
Close-up of the left side of Miss Lang's head showing blood flow as it relates to the injury to the head.
State's Exhibit 44.
Close-up of the same left side of the head showing the blood flow from the eye, which had pooled from the nose.
State's Exhibit 45.
An overall of the left side of the head showing the blood flow.
State's Exhibit 46.
The back of Miss Lang at the scene We, at the scene, we do the front, and then we roll the individual over to look at the back to see if there's any injury or trauma that needs to be documented. We also will pull up clothing to see the skin itself, to see if there's anything that is being covered by the, excuse me, by the clothing.
State's Exhibit 47.
Overall, of the right side of Ms. Lang's head, showing the injury in relation to her lying on the ground there at the scene and her hair around it.
State's Exhibit 48.
Overall of the scene, Ms. Lang at the scene, showing her head, the ground to her right, and the blood flow from the injury.
State's Exhibit 49.
Close-up of the injury, showing the injury as it was, and some stippling that you can see.
State's Exhibit 50.
Blood transfer on the right thigh of Ms. Lang. A close-up.
Now, you call that blood transfer. What does blood transfer mean?
Blood transfer is blood that has been transferred from one source to another. There's no injury associated with the area of this blood, so therefore it had to be transferred there somehow by somebody or something.
Did you take a sample of that blood?
I did not know.
Was a sample of that blood taken?
Yes.
Was it taken at the medical examiner's office?
It would have been taken, yes, at the medical examiner's office.
Do you know who took that sample?
No, sir.
State's Exhibit 51.
Ms. Lang's lower extremities, the back of the lower extremities in that rolled position, showing some debris.
State's Exhibit 52.
Photograph of Ms. Lang's right side of Ms. Lang's head at the autopsy after Dr. Terry has shaved around the injury. I attended the autopsy, showing an unobstructed view of the injury and stippling associated with that injury.
State's Exhibit 53.
A close-up of the same injury. In each of the photograph of 52 and 53, there's a ABF02 scale, American Board of Forensic Odontology scale, which gives some reference to size and things, has a measurement on it.
And State's Exhibits 54 through 57.
The clothing, the shirt in which Ms. Lang was wearing at the time, the back, this is the back of the shirt. I was demonstrating when I took this photograph that there was no drag marks on them.
Did you take any biological samples, or do you take biological samples when you are either at the scene or in the medical examiner's office?
I do not.
Okay. That's all the questions I have at this time. Thank you, Investigator.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you, Chairman.
No questions? All right, thank you, Investigator Reeves. You may step down. And call your next witness, please.
Carol Terry.
Good afternoon, Dr. Terry.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And I think, Mr. Wooten, if we can say, I know Dr. Terry's testimony tends to be long, if we can leave the water over there so that she can access it if she needs it, please.
Thank you.
If you could just grab some.
Please,
Okay, all right.
can I have something a little bigger than that?
Do we have anything bigger or any of the small bottles? He'll accommodate.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. You may swear in your witness.
Dr. Terry, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Dr. Carol Terry. I function as the Chief Medical Examiner for Gwinnett County. I'm a forensic pathologist.
What education, training, experience do you have that allows you to serve as a medical examiner and a forensic pathologist?
Okay. In 1986, I graduated from Emory College of Emory University with a Bachelor of Arts in Religion and a Bachelor of Science in Biology. From 1986 to 1990, I attended Emory University School of Medicine, where I received my Doctor of Medicine degree, so I am an MD. From 1990 to 1995, I did a specialty in medicine of pathology, and this was at the Emory University affiliated hospital systems, and I did a combined 5-year program of anatomic and clinical pathology. Thank you. Pathology is the study of disease, and anatomic pathology involves diagnosing disease states from tissues, such as biopsies from living people, tissues and organs from people obtained at the time of surgery, and autopsy specimens. Clinical pathology is the laboratory medicine aspect of pathology and involves liquid-based pathology, diagnosing disease states from fluids such as blood, urine, saliva, and things of that nature, and involves such areas of medicine as chemistry, hematology, microbiology, and blood banking. Now, during the last year of my 5-year residency, I got to work exclusively at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office in a subspecialty of pathology, forensic pathology. Forensic pathology is the medical legal investigation of death. And so I spent a year in the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office that ended in 1995. From 1995 to 1996, I did an additional year of training in forensic pathology at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, and this year of training outside of the residency was referred to as a fellowship year. But because I already had a year of experience in that office doing those same duties, I was essentially treated like a junior attending, and I got to supervise other individuals in training at that point in time. At the conclusion of my fellowship year in 1996, I stayed on staff at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office as an associate medical examiner, and I held that position until 2004. And I guess to back up a little bit, as a medical examiner in Fulton County, it was our job to investigate deaths that were sudden, unexpected, unexplained, or due to non-natural causes. And as the medical examiner investigating those deaths, it was our job to determine a cause and manner of death. Cause of death is what it sounds like, what caused this person to die at this point in time. Manner of death is a way in which we categorize deaths for purposes of reporting on the death certificate. And in Georgia, as a medical examiner, we're limited to 5 manners of death: natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. Okay, so 2004, I left Fulton County and went to work for Dr. Gerald T. Gowitt, G-O-W-I-T-T, who's the chief medical examiner in DeKalb County. And not only did we handle medical examiner cases for DeKalb County, but we also handled cases for Hall, Henry, Rockdale, and White counties. Toward the end of 2005, I had the opportunity to form my own company and put in a bid for the medical examiner contract here in Gwinnett County. So the medical examiner position here in Gwinnett County is not a county department, it is a contracted position. I was awarded that contract in February of 2006, and I have maintained that position since then. I am licensed to practice medicine in the state of Georgia and have been since 1992. I'm triple board certified by the American Board of Pathology in all 3 areas of pathology in which I have trained and studied: anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. I have personally done between 6,200 and 6,300 autopsies. I have supervised individuals in training in over 700 additional autopsies. And I have testified in the Superior Courts of Georgia and been declared an expert witness over 395 times.
Your Honor, at this time I tender Dr. Terry as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
No objection, Judge.
All right, she will be so tendered.
Dr. Terry, did you conduct an autopsy in the medical examiner's case number 21G1279?
Yes, I did.
Well, first of all, where does that number come from?
Okay. 21, it was a death that occurred in the year 2021. G stands for Gwinnett. And then the 1279, this was the 1,279th death that was reported to our office in that year.
And that is a number assigned to every case that comes into the medical examiner's office.
Yes, a number is assigned to every death that is reported to our office. Not every reported death comes into our office, but every death that is reported to our office gets assigned a case number.
And does that case number follow every activity, photograph, sample, procedure that is taken in that particular death?
In our office, yes.
What did you do in relationship to case number 21G1279?
Okay, typically, with any death that's reported to our office in which we have accepted jurisdiction and my investigator has decided that the body needs to come in for an examination, there is a discussion that occurs between me and my investigator so that I am briefed on what they know about the case and if they've gone to the scene, what was observed at the scene. And then when I go to do the examination in the morgue, typically the investigator who handled the case or went to the scene assists with the examination so that there can be a free exchange of information as we're doing the examination. So in the case of a gunshot wound, I'll have x-rays taken prior to my examining the body, prior to the disaster bag containing the body even being opened, because that's something that my technicians can do without the body being exposed and the disaster bag being opened, so that's something that can be done prior to my arrival into the morgue, and so I can know whether or not I have any evidence in the body that I need to recover. Also, in reviewing the circumstances, I'll determine what sort of trace evidence, if any, I need to direct my attention to collecting prior to any undressing or cleaning of the body. So that's very important that I know about the circumstances under which a death has occurred or the body has been found. Then I'll do an external examination of the body. And in doing this external or outside examination of the body, I'm describing any articles of clothing that are on the body, any personal effects, any kind of medical intervention that occurred, and then much like any family physician would examine any one of you, I'll take a measured height or body length, a recorded weight from the scale in the morgue. I'll say whether or not the person appears consistent with the age that they're purported to be. Now, in the case in question, the individual came into our office as an unidentified person, so of course there's going to be attention directed to identifying marks, scars, tattoos, because we want to get this person identified. Again, depending upon the circumstances, there may be some collection of trace type evidence. In this case in question, because of the circumstances, I collected various swabs and smears from body surfaces and orifices because I had a young female dead in a park. And so one of the things I've got to be concerned about, was there any kind of sexual contact that occurred? So these are things, if you don't think about them in the beginning, you're going to lose it because you're going to start altering the body by undressing and cleaning the body. So these are my first steps, and then after the external examination, attention was then directed to doing an internal examination. So opening the body and examining the organs as they're positioned in the body. At that point in time, we will collect specimens for routine drug testing, at least, depending upon the nature of the case, we may do more expanded drug testing. But we'll at least collect that. We will collect specimens for potential DNA analysis, and then I'll have the organs removed from the body. And in doing a full autopsy, we'll look at the organs of the chest, abdomen, pelvis, as well as the brain. I'll examine the organs, weigh them, dissect them, and take a small piece of each major tissue and place in a container of formaldehyde solution in case I have to look at it under the microscope. In some cases, I don't need to process the tissue to look at under the microscope, but that's something that is taken in the course of doing a full autopsy. And these are the steps that were taken in the course of this examination. And also in the course of this examination, I recovered some evidence from the body, specifically bullet fragments from the head.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibits 59 through 60.
Okay, are we skipping 58 on purpose? Do not have a 58.
I'm sorry. There's actually 58 through 60. I'm not skipping it. I'm just not reading it.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Are State's Exhibits 58 through 60 true and accurate depictions of that which they're photographs of?
Yes, they are.
Has anything been added to, taken away from them?
No.
Your Honor, the state would tender State's Exhibits 58 through 60.
No objection, Judge.
All right, 58 through 60 are admitted without objection.
And we'll start with a description of, since you mentioned them, States 58 and 59.
Okay.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Publishing States Exhibit 58. Describe States Exhibit 58 for the jury, please.
Okay, State's Exhibit 58 is the jacket fragment of a bullet that I recovered from the head of the deceased. And so this jacket is the outer covering of the bullet, and it's what I would call yellow metal. So it's kind of a golden look to it, and it was on the outer part of the bullet, and it's been broken off, and on the outside of it, you have what's referred to as rifling marks. So when the bullet came out of the gun, it imparted these striations on the outside of the jacket. And so that's what we're looking at in this photograph. And in addition, this photograph depicts a scale for reference, so you can see roughly what size this jacket fragment is. And there's an adhesive label that has the case number, the deceased name, the date I began the autopsy, because I did the external examination on one day to try to get identifying information out to the law enforcement, and then did the internal examination on the next day. And then it's got my signature on there, as well as a description. It's a yellow metal jacket from the left side of the head, and so I recovered it from inside the head.
And States Exhibit 59.
Okay. State's Exhibit 59 is the lead core part of the bullet. So this is the center part of the bullet. The core in the jacket had separated. And in this photograph, you see the lead core. I've marked the base of the lead core with a capital T that you can see in this photograph, T for Terry. And you also have the identification tag associated with it, case number, date of commencement of the autopsy, the deceased name, and my signature, as well as the site of where I recovered this lead core. And it's not depicted, but there was also an additional small fragment of yellow metal jacket that I recovered from inside the head, but these are the two main fragments of the bullet that were recovered from the left side of the head in doing the internal examination.
Now, these physical samples you collected, but you also mentioned other samples that would include swabs, blood. What is done with the biological samples that you collect from, that you collected from this line?
Okay. If we're talking about the swabs and smears, those specimens were collected and packaged and turned
What rulings were you able to make in your expert opinion?
In my expert opinion, the cause of death was that Miss Lang died as a result of a gunshot wound of the head. And want me to proceed on about manner of death? Yes. And for manner of death, it was my ruling that the manner be undetermined.
And and when you say undetermined, that is from one of the five categories that you list. It's natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined.
That is correct.
Did you make additional findings about how Miss Lang died based on observations made at the scene, photographs, or other information?
Yes, I have additional information about circumstances surrounding her death based on examination of the body in conjunction with speaking with my investigator and reviewing photographs from the scene.
We can look at some of the photographs from the scene. But first, I want to go ahead and get this over with. What was the wound path taken by the bullet that killed Tori Lang?
Okay, well, the entrance wound was on the right side of her head, kind of above and in front of the ear, roughly in the temporal area. And the wound path went from her right side towards her left. There was no significant upward or downward or frontward or backward deviation. It basically went straight across. And in doing so, it produced a devastating injury of the base of the brain, disrupting the main blood vessels at the base of the brain, as well as transecting an area of the brain stem known as the pons.
And what does a bullet transecting that particular section of the brainstem do to the human body?
Well, basically, it severs the connection between the cortex of the brain and the rest of the body, so you would not be capable of any voluntary movement, and would result in a pretty sudden death. Because again, your brainstem is responsible for vital functions of the body, and it has now been completely severed.
Would vital functions include heartbeat, breathing, motor control?
Yes.
Yes to all of those things?
Yes.
And you said death would be fairly, I want to use your words.
Sure. And the reason, because again, it's the pons, could there have been a couple of heartbeats after? Yeah, possibly. So, but death would be fairly instant, not necessarily instantaneous. Might have gotten a couple heartbeats, but I can tell you there was no breathing in of any blood. So I think death was probably within a matter of seconds.
But after this region of the brainstem is injured in that fashion, essentially there would be no voluntary movement by Tori after receiving that injury.
That is correct. No voluntary movement.
Does State's Exhibit 60 demonstrate this wound path or allow you to show the jury the wound path?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, before I publish State's Exhibit 60, I will warn that it is on the more gruesome side of things. So if there's anybody in the
Other than jurors, obviously, who cannot.
They were accepted, Your Honor.
Okay.
This is been admitted as State's Exhibit 60. Can you describe for the jury what's shown here?
Okay, first of all, let me give you orientation. At this point in the autopsy, the brain has been removed from the skull. As the body is positioned here, the face would be pointed upward, the back of the head pointed downward. May I stand?
Yes.
Make sure you keep your voice up so that you can be heard by the jury in court.
Okay. This is where the spinal cord is. This is an area at the base of the skull called the foramen magnum. This is not an injury. So it's important to recognize that as an anatomic landmark. Here is the entrance wound into the skull. And again, this is the right side of her head. And the bullet has come across. We see radiating fractures or breaks in the skull that emanate from this hole. and then the bullet fragments and breaks the bone over here on the opposite side of the skull. And as I mentioned earlier, the core and the jacket separated. I recovered them kind of beneath the scalp in this area, but this is where the skull is broken. But so the bullet has crossed from the right side of the head to the left, essentially passing straight across. And these bones here, there, and there, called the Petrius Ridge. This is where it communicates with where your ears are, and we've got fractures across both of these bones here. So when you see photographs from the scene and you see blood coming out of the ears, that's why we've got a fracture of the base of the skull, basilar skull fractures, where blood is going to be leaking through those areas.
Now, did this particular, your examination of the inside of Tori's skull, did that confirm, or was that consistent with findings that you, external, did that confirm your analysis based on what you saw externally?
Yes, that she was shot in the head.
Were you able to determine the distance from which she was shot?
Yes. I was able to give a range of fire.
How so?
Well, one of the things that I do as a forensic pathologist is my expertise is in pattern recognition. And while I'm not a ballistics expert, my expertise is in terminal ballistics, what bullets do to bodies and the evidence that they deposit on the bodies. And so in looking at this entrance gunshot wound on Miss Lang's head, there was gunpowder injury around this wound. When a firearm is discharged, other things come out of the end of the gun other than just the bullet. You can have gases, you can have flame, you can have smoke or soot, and you can have particles of burned and unburned gunpowder coming out. And based on the mass associated with these different elements, it affects how far this material travels. So a contact wound of the head is going to look different from a distant gunshot wound to the head, because you don't have these materials getting deposited on the skin. And there are gradations in this range based upon the access of these different materials to being deposited around the wound. And looking at Miss Lang, the configuration of the wound was round. With a contact wound, because you get gases that build up between the scalp and the skull, you get tearing of the wound typically. We don't have this. This was not a contact wound. Also, you can get a muzzle injury. You can get burning or searing of the wound edges. You can get soot. None of that was present. This is not a contact range wound. If you move a little further away, you can get soot around the wound because you got the smoke or the soot getting deposited on the skin, and you can get gunpowder striking the skin and producing injuries. Well, we have the gunpowder injury, but we don't have the soot. So this is falling in a range of fire that I refer to as a medium range wound. And medium range can also be referred to as intermediate. I tend to use medium because intermediate sounds too much like indeterminate. So by medium range, I mean I've got gunpowder injury without soot. And so it implies certain things about range of fire. And in measuring the diameter of the stippling or the gunpowder injury around this wound, from that you can estimate a range of fire. The only way to know absolutely what the range of fire is to test fire the weapon and see about replicating that pattern of stippling or gunpowder injury. So in measuring the diameter of the stippling, the estimated range of fire is 10 to 12 inches from the muzzle of the gun to Miss Lang's head.
I'm going to show you what's marked as, or admitted as State's Exhibit 47. Can you describe what we're seeing in State's Exhibit 47?
Okay, State's Exhibit 47, we're looking at a photograph of the scene of Miss Lang. And in this photograph, there are a couple of things that are important here in how she's positioned at the scene. Something to note is the pattern of the blood as it's coming out of her nose And as it's coming out of the wound and out of her ears, it's going straight down in accordance with gravity. She's in that position at the time she sustained this wound, because as soon as she got this wound, it's going to start bleeding. And so she wasn't upright and fell down. She's lying in this position. Also looking at her braids, I measured the braids at 36 inches long. Her braids are splayed out behind her head. Again, she didn't fall down on top of them. They've been essentially fanned out. Her head's in that position at the time she received this wound. And that's what's important in this photograph. And in this photograph, we do have the blood that's coming from the ears, from the wound, from the nose, but there's stippling there as well. That's that gunpowder injury, but that's harder to appreciate given the bleeding and brain matter that you have associated with this wound in this picture.
Show you what's admitted as State's Exhibit 48. You recognize what's depicted in State's Exhibit 48?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the jury about it?
Okay, State's Exhibit, said 48? 48?
I'm sorry, this is State's Exhibit 52.
Sorry, 52, I'm sorry. This is a photograph that's taken in the morgue, and as I mentioned earlier, when I start conducting my examination, there's going to be various cleaning of the body, and so in the course of doing this examination, I'm altering the body. One of the things that I'm doing is shaving around the wound, so I can see the extent of this gunpowder injury around the wound. So in this photograph, she's been cleaned, undressed, and I've shaved around this wound to look at the extent of the gunpowder injury. And as I mentioned earlier, a contact wound of the head is going to look different. This entrance wound is a typical looking wound. It's round, and it has this gunpowder injury around it, and we don't see any soot there. So this is what I characterize as a medium range of fire.
And you said a medium range to fire means 10 to 12 inches.
Well, in this case, based on the diameter, estimated 10 to 12 inches. And what's going to be medium range of fire, if you consult with a ballistics examiner, it's going to vary based upon the type of firearm, age of ammunition,